I have been presented with a challenge by my producers. And as you know, I love a good challenge. Today, we're going to be presented with a series of pro-abortion arguments from Bill Nye the Science Guy, who's very scientific.
My sex junk.
I'm going to debunk each of them.
Many more hundreds of eggs are fertilized than become humans. Eggs get fertilized, and by that I mean sperm get accepted by ova a lot. But that's not all you need. You have to attach to the uterine wall, the inside of a womb, a woman's womb. But if you're going to hold that as a standard, that is to say, if you're going to say when an egg is fertilized, it's therefore has the same rights as an individual, then whom are you going to sue? Whom are you going to imprison? Every woman who's had a fertilized egg pass through her?
Okay, stop it right there. Okay, so he's making several arguments in a row. Number one, you'll notice that he says that the location of the fertilized ova is what matters, right? That once it's implanted, then presumably it is now on its way to becoming a full human life. I've noticed that his standard for abortion is not implantation. There are some politicians who believe implantation is the standard, including, for example, Newt Gingrich. That is not his standard. He has not offered a standard, you'll notice. Also, the notion that a spontaneous bodily abortion, meaning your body does not actually carry through the pregnancy, that this is treated the same way as a purposeful, deliberate abortion is very silly. In no area of criminal law would you treat those two things the same. If you left your car in neutral and it slid down a hill and it hit somebody, that would not be treated the same thing as you taking your car, ramming your foot to the gas while somebody is standing right behind the car. Not the same thing. As far as who'd be punished, the entire pro-life movement has made the point that it's the abortion doctor who should theoretically be punished in these cases since he's part of essentially an abortion mill.
Nobody likes abortion.
Wait, stop. Okay, so why? Why? Really? It's fine. What's the problem? He's just said that it's basically the same thing as a naturally occurring thing and half the time just kind of slides out and whatever. Why? Why does nobody like abortion? Explain.
But you can't tell somebody what to do. I mean, she has rights over this, especially if she doesn't like the guy that got her pregnant.
Okay, stop that right there. What?
What?
If the guy got her pregnant, and presumably we're not talking about a rape here, but she doesn't like the guy who got her pregnant, so she gets to kill the product? How? Why? Is there any logical connect there at all? By the way, there are many people who don't like the father of their children. The children are fully grown. Can I murder the child now? What happens in cases of divorce? Does mommy just go to kill the kids because she and daddy don't get, like, what? There's no logical connect there at all.
We have so many more important things to be dealing with.
Wait, stop. What? I mean, man, this is just, he doesn't even bother to carry through the line of argument. It's just a bunch of emotional appeals. We have so many more important things to be dealing with than what? The killing of 1 million unborn human beings in the womb every year in the United States? That seems like a pretty important thing.
We have so many more problems. To squander resources on this argument based on bad science, on just lack of understanding.
No.
It's very frustrating.
What bad science have I presented thus far? Any?
You wouldn't know how big a human egg was if it weren't for microscopes.
So the what? Why does the size matter? I'm confused. He's a scientist. This is like him saying, well, you know, does atomic chemistry matter at all? Does molecular biology matter? Like, do those things matter? I mean, if you didn't have a microscope, you wouldn't even know they exist. Yeah, but they have consequences, it turns out.
You wouldn't know the process. You wouldn't have that shot, the famous shot or shots where the sperm are bumping up against the egg. You wouldn't have that without science.
Right, and we do. So, and your point is that we'd be better off if we were ignorant like you appear to be?
You stupid.
Man, the science guy over here. I love this. He's deriding science in order to avoid the consequences of his own arguments. He's like, you wouldn't even know about sperm and egg if it weren't for me, the science guy, and that's why you should ignore what's happening with sperm and egg.
So I just really encourage you to not tell women what to do and not pursue these laws that really are in nobody's best interest.
They're in nobody's best interest except for the unborn child. Also, what is a woman? Also, I love that he just comes back to his truism. You can't tell women what to do. The entire point is, I'm not telling a woman what to do with her body. I'm telling her what she can't do to somebody else's body, the independent human life within her. That would be the thing. We'll get to more on this in just 1 second. First, I've debunked communism, JFK conspiracies, and other disputed topics. I haven't yet debunked the huge lie surrounding store-bought meat. Grocery stores and leftists, they'll tell you to buy that grass-fed, super omega, morally superior, equity-bringing Live Your Truth beef. They push the lie that those labels mean anything at all, but they don't mean a thing. They're often slapped on products imported from overseas with more frequent flyer miles than you have. Here is the label that matters: 100% American meat, and Good Ranchers has it. Good Ranchers only sources from farms and ranches right here in the United States. Maybe you thought a steak cooking over a fire couldn't get more American. It can with any box of Good Ranchers. I'm told the iron levels of Daily Wire employees are at an all-time high due to just how good Good Ranchers really is. Ditch the mystery meat aisle. Order from Good Ranchers today. Trust where your meat comes from. You wouldn't invite a stranger to dinner, so don't invite strange meat. Use my code Shapiro. Get $30 off your box of steakhouse quality cuts plus free shipping. Change the way you think about meat and the way you buy it. Your purchase not only strengthens American farms, it also supports what we do here at the Daily Wire. So head on over to goodranchers.com/Shapiro today to debunk store-bought meat with me. He's wearing smart guy glasses. This means he's smart, probably.
Have you ever heard of a band called...
So one of the first questions people have to think about is, are fetuses persons? Now that's a very important linguistic question, persons. I didn't say human beings, I didn't say alive. Those are three different issues, right? Something can be alive but not be a person. Your dog is a good example. You might love your dog, it's a wonderful thing, but it's not a person.
Is an unborn
Something
person
can
a
be
dog?
human and potentially not be a person, right? Some people think the early embryo, for example, before 14 days, or stem cells being derived, are members of the human species, but may not be persons. So what do we mean by persons? We mean something that has a certain set of moral and or legal rights, the most important of which is a right against inviolability. They can't be killed or destroyed or harmed without very good reason.
Okay, so I've noticed an extraordinary amount of circular logic here. Circle detected. Okay, so get this. You ready? A person is a human being with rights. A human being with rights is a person. At no point do you define what makes a human being the human being with rights. At no point does he define when a human being transforms from a human being without rights into a human being with rights. So he just completely avoids the argument through this magical circle. A person is a human being with rights. A human being with rights is a person. Okay, define human being with rights.
And there are a few different kinds of theories you can have. One could be just to say if X is living and a human being, X is a person, right? Now, some people have problems with that. So Peter Singer and some animal rights advocates, for example, think that that's a speciesist attitude, that by saying human equals person, it's problematic that we're excluding animals.
Right. He's wrong. I mean, listen, I will give it to Peter Singer. Peter Singer is a logical thinker. He is consistent. Peter Singer literally believes that you should be able to murder a baby past its birth. He says this. He's not closeted about this. He says that because babies are not sentient and essentially have the same mental function as some kinds of animals, this means you should be able to abort, and when I say abort, I mean murder, a child post-birth. So I will give Peter Singer perfect points for consistency. But citing Peter Singer as your moral authority is sort of a risky business, as it turns out.
So other people have sometimes what are called a capacity X view, where they say, in order to be a person, you have to have X capacity. And then we have to fill in what X is. Is it the ability to think complex thoughts, the ability to plan and look towards the future, the ability to feel pain, whether you understand it? Is it about continuity of an identity over time, or is it merely being alive and breathing?
Okay, so here's the problem. Any standard other than alive and breathing means that you're going to be murdering people unborn in the womb. Right? Any other standard he mentioned there. So, discontinuity of identity. We have people who have conditions where they have discontinuity of identity. Can you murder them? Do they have human value? How about thinking complex thoughts? Have you ever met a small child? They don't think complex thoughts. Or a person who is very elderly and may be losing mental function. Honest to goodness, the standards that he is using here are completely applicable to people who are fully grown. You know, you find out when you think this thing through, it turns out that every standard other than being a human being with potential, other than being a member of the species Homo sapiens, any other standard leads you to some pretty dark roads here.
And then there are complex questions about what happens for things that have the potential to have capacity X or had capacity X but lost it. So for example, a fetus doesn't have the ability, as early fetus, let's just say an embryo, just to make it very easy, an embryo before 14 days doesn't have the capacity to think deep thoughts about the future or have future orientation. I think that's pretty well accepted by everyone. But it certainly has the potential to do so, right? And the question is that enough? What kind of theory of potentiality? hydrogen and oxygen each have the potential together to become water. But does that mean that they are water? They have the metaphysical properties of water?
No,
Or do we require
stupid.
more of a kind of potentiality, something like in the natural course of things, you will become something?
Well, I mean, obviously the latter. That's like saying that sperm and egg, apart from one another, have the potential to become a human being. Apart from each other, they don't. Combined, they do. I mean, it's the latter, obviously. When you say potential human being, you mean this is a human being with potential, as Robert George says from Princeton.
Now, even if you think something is a person, that doesn't necessarily mean you've solved the abortion problem. So it is possible, although popular among philosophers, not so popular in the political press, to say fetuses are persons, and yet abortion is still legal and justified. How does that argument go? The suggestion is that there is a right of another entity that has overcome whatever interest the fetus has. And that is the right typically of the mother who is gestating the fetus. So the claim is, yes, a fetus is a person. Yes, abortion will cause the death of a person, but that doesn't mean that abortion is wrong, because the woman gestating the fetus has a right to stop that gestating, even if it will result in the death of a person.
Now, you can see why that might be popular among certain philosophers, but is wildly unpopular with the American people, because it turns out that that is a horrifying moral argument that is, again, broadly applicable to situations beyond fetushood. When do my rights conquer your ability to live? I mean, throughout human history, by the way, there have been multiple societies where the dehumanization of other people has allowed people to argue for their mass murder.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
I'm not just talking about the Holocaust. I'm talking about throughout human history. That chain of thought, that this is a person with a right to life, and my countervailing rights overcome that right to life, that is an argument with an extraordinarily ugly history. The fact that that last argument is so ugly is why they spend so much time trying to say that this is not a person. Because if they admit that this is a person, and that the person has rights, that a human being with potential is in fact a human being, then all the other arguments fall away pretty quickly. And they know this, which is why they never resort to this final argument. Again, the clearer they are in their arguments, the uglier the argument is. If they're very clear, like Peter Singer, that small babies who are not fully sentient should be treated basically like embryos and then killed, then their entire argument looks too ugly. And so instead, they have to just ignore the personhood of the fetus or pretend that the personhood of the fetus does not exist at all.
Your baby probably has a beating heart, you know. It can feel pain, and it has fingernails.